I never thought I'd break the most sacred rule of my profession, but on that day, in the heart of the Alaskan wilderness, I did. My name is Dr. Michael Carson, and for the past 15 years, I've worked as a wildlife veterinarian in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, the remote Northern Territories, where winter doesn't just arrive, it dominates, where temperatures plummet to 40 below zero, where the wind doesn't whisper, it screams. I've spent more nights in snow-covered cabins than I have in my own home. I've treated injured grizzlies, rehabilitated orphaned moose calves, and tracked endangered species through blizzards that would make most people turn back before they even started. But there's one rule, one ironclad, non-negotiable rule that every wildlife professional learns on day one: never, and I mean never, approach a lone adult injured wolf in the field. Wolves aren't like other animals. They don't operate alone. They're part of something bigger, something ancient. A pack, a family, a hierarchy built on loyalty, survival, and an unspoken code that humans will never fully understand. When you see a lone wolf, especially an injured one, it's not abandoned. It's not lost. It belongs to someone. And that someone is watching, but rules. Rules are made for normal days, for clear skies and rational thinking. And this was not a normal day. It was late February, the kind of winter storm that locals call the White Death. Visibility was maybe 20 feet. The snow came down in thick, angry sheets, and the wind howled like it had a vendetta against anything still breathing. I was driving back from a routine check on a radio-collared caribou herd when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a rock, a dark shape, half buried in the snow along the frozen riverbank. But then he moved just slightly, a twitch, the kind of movement that separates the living from the dead. I stopped the truck, my breath fogging up the windshield as I leaned forward, squinting through the storm, and that's when I saw him clearly. A wolf. Not just any wolf. An alpha male, massive, easily 120 pounds. His coat was thick, grey and silver, dusted with snow. His eyes, those amber glowing eyes, stared straight ahead, unfocused, exhausted, and his left hind leg. God, his left hind leg was twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. He wasn't moving much, just shallow breaths. The kind of breathing that says, I don't have much time left. I sat there in that truck, hands gripping the steering wheel, and I felt it. That pull, that terrible human pull between what I should do and what I needed to do. My training screamed at me, don't touch him, don't go near him. He's pack property. You interfere, and you could trigger something you can't control. But my heart saw something different. I saw a living creature, intelligent, proud, fighting for his life, slowly freezing to death on the ice, and I couldn't look away. I grabbed my emergency kit, threw open the truck door, and stepped into the storm. The cold hit me like a fist. Wind tearing at my jacket, snow stinging my face. But I pushed forward, boots crunching through the snow, until I was kneeling beside him. Up close, he was even more magnificent. His face was scarred, old battles, old victories. His breathing was labored, each exhale a small cloud of vapor that disappeared into the storm. Hey, buddy, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the wind. I know you don't know me. And I know this isn't protocol, but I'm not leaving you here. His eyes shifted, just barely, locked onto mine, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt like he understood. I checked his leg. It was bad. A fracture, maybe a dislocation. Old too. At least a week, judging by the swelling. This wasn't a fresh injury. This was something he'd been surviving with, something that had slowed him down, something that had made him expendable. I didn't have time to think about what that meant. I just worked, stabilized the leg as best I could, wrapped him in a thermal blanket and, God, he was heavy, lifted him into the back of my truck. He didn't fight, didn't growl, just, let me. That should have been my first clue. I started driving. The storm was getting worse. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The road, if you could even call it that, was a narrow, snow-covered path carved through the wilderness. One wrong turn, and I'd be stuck out here until spring, but I kept going. kept my eyes on the barely visible trail ahead, kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, and then I heard it, a howl, low, long, mournful. It came from somewhere behind me, somewhere in the storm, and then another. And another, not the howl of one wolf, the howl of many. My hands tightened on the wheel. My heart started to race. They were calling, communicating, coordinating, and they were close. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing but swirling white. But I could feel them, out there, moving through the trees. Tracking me, tracking him. "Okay, Mike," I muttered to myself, pressing harder on the gas. "Just get back to base. Just get him inside. You'll be fine." But I wasn't fine, because a mile later they appeared. It happened so fast. One moment the road ahead was empty. The next, they were there. 6 wolves, massive, spread out across the road in a perfect line. I slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded, fishtailing in the snow, before coming to a stop maybe 30 feet from them. My breath caught in my throat. They didn't move, didn't bark or snarl, just stood there, watching. The one in the center, larger than the others. Your darker coat took a single step forward, the beta, the second in command. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, locked onto my windshield, onto me. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, felt the cold sweat on my palms despite the freezing air. I was trapped. Behind me, the road disappeared into the storm. Ahead, 6 apex predators blocked my only way out, and in the back of my truck, their injured packmate lay wrapped in a blanket. Barely conscious, I had 2 choices: sit here and hope they left, or do something incredibly stupid. I chose stupid. Slowly, very slowly, I opened the truck door. The cold hit me again, but this time it felt sharper, more real. I stepped out, keeping my hands visible, palms open. The universal sign of peace. The wolves didn't move, just watched. I took a breath. And then another, and then I spoke. "I know what this looks like," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "I know he's one of yours. I'm not trying to take him. I'm trying to save him." Silence. Just the wind and the snow. His leg is broken. He's been alone for days. If I leave him out here, he dies. You know that. The beta tilted his head. "Just slightly. I'm a doctor. I help animals like him, like you. I'm not your enemy." I took a step forward, and then another. The wolves tensed, but they didn't attack. I moved to the back of the truck, opened the door, and gestured to the injured alpha inside. "See? He's safe. I'm keeping him warm. I'm going to fix his leg. And then I'll bring him back." The beta moved. Slowly, deliberately, he approached the truck. The other wolf stayed in formation, eyes locked on me. He sniffed the air. Once, twice, and then he looked inside. The injured alpha stirred, let out a weak whine, and the beta responded. A low rumbling sound. Not aggressive, not threatening, almost gentle. He turned back to me, studied me for what felt like an eternity, and then he bowed, not like a dog, not like submission. Like acknowledgement, like respect. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen as this wild, untamed predator, this creature that could tear me apart in seconds, lowered his head in what could only be described as gratitude. The other wolves followed. One by one, each of them lowered their heads. It was like watching something out of a myth, out of a story told around a campfire, but it was real. I was living it. The beta stepped back, his eyes still on mine, and then, without a sound, he turned and walked into the trees. The others followed. Within moments, they were gone, swallowed by the storm. The road ahead was clear. I don't remember driving back to base. My hands were shaking too badly. My mind was too loud, but I made it. I carried the injured alpha inside, laid him on the examination table, and started working. X-rays, blood work, stabilization. Dr. Sarah Mendez, my colleague, my friend, the only other person crazy enough to work out here, walked in halfway through. "Mike." "What the hell is that?" "A wolf, I can see that." "Where did you—" "I found him on the frozen river, alone, injured." She stared at me. "You broke the rule." "I know. You could have been killed." "I know." She crossed her arms. And I looked down at the wolf on the table. His breathing was steadier now. His eyes half closed, finally resting, and I'd do it again, Sarah sighed, walked over, looked at the x-rays. Her expression changed. Mike, what? This injury, it's old. At least 10 days. I know. No, you don't understand. Look at the bone structure. Look at the way it healed wrong. This wolf, he's been surviving like this for over a week. She turned to me, her voice quieter now. Mike, wolves don't leave their injured behind unless they have to. Unless the injured wolf slows down the whole pack. Unless he's no longer useful, she nodded. They abandoned him. The weight of that hit me like a truck. This wolf, this proud, scarred alpha had been cast out, left to die, and the pack that surrounded me on that road. They weren't trying to get him back. They were saying goodbye and thanking me for giving him a chance. 3 months later, I released him. His leg had healed. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to run, enough to hunt, enough to live. I drove him back to the same area where I'd found him. Opened the crate, he stepped out slowly, sniffed the air, looked around, and then he looked at me just for a moment, and I swear I saw it, recognition. Then he turned and disappeared into the trees. A year passed. I didn't see him again. Didn't expect to, but I never stopped looking. And then, one autumn afternoon, while I was out tracking a caribou herd, I saw them. A pack. 6 wolves, resting in a clearing, and there at the center was him, the alpha I'd saved. His leg had a slight limp, but he was strong, healthy, alive. He saw me. I know he did. He stood. Took a few steps in my direction. The rest of the pack watched, calm, unbothered. He stopped maybe 20 feet away, sniffed the air, and then he did something I'll never forget. He sat. Just sat there, looking at me, not with fear, not with aggression, with something else, something I can only describe as understanding. We stayed like that for maybe a minute, 2 creatures from different worlds, acknowledging each other in the only way we knew how. And then he stood, turned, and walked back to his pack. They disappeared into the forest together. People ask me now, after everything, if I believe animals feel gratitude. I don't just believe it, I know it, because I've seen it. I've felt it. I've stood in a snowstorm, surrounded by wolves who could have killed me, and instead, they bowed. Compassion isn't just a human trait. Respect isn't just something we invented. It's a language older than words, older than us, and sometimes, if you're brave enough to speak it, they'll answer back.